had to really reflect on the pace that my life was going at. And I realized that I didn't know how to be still. There was a lot of anxiety and shame around not being productive, not doing work.
Welcome to Coffee Break, where we invite you to walk on the path of self-discovery with us. I'm Fatima, joined by my co-hosts, Liz and Grace, 3 women from different walks of life, united by our passion for purposeful living, authentic connection, and service to others. We recognize that the journey of self-discovery is not a solitary one. You are not meant to walk on this path alone. We need each other in this fast-paced world. Through our vulnerable conversations, we explore life's challenges and provide hope and solutions. We invite you to grab a cup of coffee and take a break with us.
Welcome to our 5th episode of Season 1. We've been discussing about how more and more people are experiencing deep loneliness and isolation. And one area of life that has changed a lot for most of us is work, and how our experiences and relationships at work have evolved since COVID. So, Grace, as long as I've known you, you've had such a diverse work experience and challenges along the way that you've navigated with so much intention and grace. And so, to just start us off, will you tell us about your relationship with work?
Yeah, so my experience as a working individual has been quite the journey, and I was really reflecting on all the different types of jobs and people that I've met from working. And I've just been in so many different spaces with so many different work dynamics and different personalities. And I've learned a lot. I'd say that because of work and from work, it's been kind of a catalyst to my growth as a human being. And I feel like really transformed the way that I connect with other people. I've learned to be a better leader, a better person, and a better friend even from my work experiences. And I've dealt with like such a range of extreme toxicity and an amazing leadership. And I've also met some really cool friends from my experience. So I'll just give a little bit of backstory of kind of when I started working and where I'm at now. I was a server for about 7 years, and there were a lot of odd jobs that I did to pay for college because I knew really early on that my parents told me they weren't going to be able to afford to help me with school. So I would work to save up for college and throughout college. And during college, it was really common for me to be juggling 3 jobs at once. And the way that I viewed it was 1 to pay the bills, 1 to learn a new skill, and 1 for passion. And so I knew early on that I wanted to pursue video editing, something within this industry of work. And, I'll explain why I was needing to do 3 jobs, because the way that the system works, like as a college student or a high school graduate, you can't really go into the market and find a job that does all 3 of those things for you. Like that,
Exactly.
Yeah, is in line with your passion or your career goals and can pay the bills, especially if you're supporting yourself, whether paying for tuition or paying for housing or whatever it might be. And at the time, I was really kind of hard on myself because I knew I was going to major in film. I had received so much concern from people that I really looked up to, from different, people that I viewed almost as mentors at the time, and just various adults in my life that were very concerned I would end up being like a starving artist, or they're like, are you sure you want to major in film? You don't want to go into something a little more profitable or a little more financially secure.
I have a question. Did that have anything to do with your culture or just your particular friends and family?
I think culture for sure played an impact. I think it's less so now, but there is definitely that traditional mindset of becoming a lawyer, a doctor, or
Engineer.
Or an engineer, yeah. And I think it does come from a place of love, because ultimately being immigrants, they had to work so hard to get to a place where to provide a secure future for their kids, and then for their kids to turn around and say, I'm going to be an artist, or I'm going to do something where they have no idea what that looks like financially. And so it comes from a place of love, of wanting them to not struggle like the way that they had to struggle. I will say that I feel very blessed to be in a space where I can pursue those things and I can take certain risks thanks to my parents. So at the time I was juggling the three different jobs. So what that would usually look like is like I'd be working a serving job and then I'd work an internship to learn something new. So I did an internship with a place called Turner Broadcasting and I learned project management while I was there. And then I did like a different internship for marketing and design at a place called LG. And for me, the way I thought about it is let's do work that will teach me a skill that school won't teach me. And I'm already learning editing, videography, storytelling during college. So I always knew I wanted to kind of pursue an entrepreneurial route and a non-traditional route. And so I was like, okay, project management, marketing, design, these are all things I'll need to know. And I feel like it did pay off, kind of pushing myself that hard at that time. So my pace was always kind of really fast. It wasn't until COVID hit that I really had to slow down. So I was essentially, even after I graduated, going at this pace of juggling multiple roles, multiple jobs, and pushing myself really hard because of that fear of failure and also wanting to prove people wrong.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, all the people that were like, this isn't going to work. And I had so many people that came up to me, like even in the middle of my quarter at college, they're like, you haven't changed your major yet? So I think that just gave me more fire to push for my dreams and my goals. And it wasn't until COVID hit that everything stopped. And we kind of talked about this in the first episode. But at that time, I realized that I was burnt out and I didn't fully process that I was burnt out or the symptoms of burnout. But when it happened, I had to really stop. I had to really reflect on the pace that my life was going at. And I realized that I didn't know how to be still. I didn't know how to not work. And it wasn't until 3 months into the pandemic where that really sank in for me because I would be eating a meal and I'd be rushing through it. Like I would be eating it very quickly and everything that I did was kind of like fast and efficient. And then I was like, for what? I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have any work to do. And so that's what made me realize like, okay, I think there was a lot of anxiety and shame around not being productive, not doing work. If there was an activity or something that's just purely rest or fun that didn't contribute to, I guess, my future goals, it almost felt like, what's the point? So that's where during COVID, I kind of really restructured the way that I thought about work and also my self-worth not being so tied to my work identity. And coming out of that, I was able to approach work with a much healthier mindset and with a much healthier relationship. Now, currently, I'm really enjoying the process of this journey as a creator and editor and now producing this podcast with you all. And I feel like I've learned so much from this entire journey. And I feel like I have a lot to say on the subject of work, but since this season is focusing on loneliness and belonging, I'll definitely focus more on the people or relational aspect when it comes to working.
Yeah.
I love all of this that we're hearing about your story, and I know that from talking to you and preparing for this, we've got lots of solutions to share with you all throughout the podcast, but definitely towards the end, I'm sure a lot of people feel like they can relate and identify to her story.
So as long as I've known you, right, so 20 years now, and hearing about all of your stories and experiences at work, you've had so many dynamic relationships at work. And I think the way that you've approached work and those relationships has evolved so much. So can you just go into a little bit of the challenges that you've faced in making and maintaining relationships with your coworkers?
So I think one of the big challenges that a lot of people face at least once in their careers or in their jobs, and if you haven't, then you're blessed, is dealing with toxic management and toxic coworkers. I think we've all dealt with at least one person at some point. And I say that work has made me a better person and a better friend even is because I've learned so much patience in the process of dealing with complex conflicts and different types of personalities. And I've had both of the toxic management and toxic coworkers. I've had managers in the past that were literally preying on my downfall and kind of like waiting for you to mess up so that they can catch you and exercise their power over you. For my own privacy and the privacy of other people, I won't be naming any establishments.
So we don't get
specific
sued.
names. Right.
You won't be posting photos of
Right.
what you're talking about.
So I had one job where I had a boss that was literally so mean for no reason. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to dealing with somebody very difficult or somebody that is just unhappy. And so they take it out on you. So for example, like one of my opening roles was to sweep. And it became an issue where right after I swept, she would come up to me with like a soda can or something. And she would be like, you missed this. And she would be yelling at me. And then I'd have to like go sweep the whole thing again or whatever it is. And then one day we had cameras out there. I happened to be passing by the monitor. And after I swept it, she would leave trash out there and then come at me. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was shocking. And there was multiple occasions where I felt like she was just trying to nitpick at things or being very difficult just to make us more miserable. And so the question is, how do you deal with somebody like that? What do you do when your workplace doesn't foster peace? And later on, I actually found out that she was so I found this out because she let it slip to one of my coworkers. And I found out that she was actually being mean to all the Koreans on purpose to try to make them all quit because she knew her business was failing and she didn't want the Korean community to find out. And so she was trying to be so mean to us that we would leave. And it worked. It worked on 90% of the people there. It worked on me. I did leave eventually. I was like, this is too toxic. Like, I'm not going to stay here. But yeah, I've had multiple experiences like that with different management. And I think one lesson that I've really took out of those experiences is to kill them with kindness. I feel like anytime you're dealing with a toxic person or somebody that just so miserable that they want to drag you down with them too, it's just a reflection of their internal world. And a lot of the times it has nothing to do with you. You just happen to be a character that's passing by them at this time in this place. And I think it's important to not stoop down to their level and to not engage by dishing it back, but to just be kind. And I feel like in my most difficult jobs, I leaned into God more and kind of really thought about who do I want to be coming out of these difficult situations. How can I act in a way that after this job is all said and done, I'm happy with the way that I carried myself?
In those kind of situations, you have to lean into God because there's no way on my own human capability would I be able to handle that for very long.
Yeah, it helped me to stay true to my values. It helped me to stay true to who I wanted to be. And it attracted the right people to me. It attracted the genuine individuals. And when you master the ability to see that a lot of other people's actions aren't about you, it's just their internal world, I feel like you stop taking things so personally. I think that was a huge lesson that I learned in dealing with toxic management, toxic coworkers, is not to take things personally. And when you're able to do that, you kind of become like a mirror to the other person. Because when this person is screaming at you, throwing a temper tantrum, being manipulative, whatever they're doing, if you remain level-headed, calm, professional, I feel like it immediately makes them realize how ridiculous they're being. Like, I'm serious, it works every time, for the most part. Yeah. And I've had that happen many times where I've had a manager or somebody like losing it on me. And I just remain level-headed, cool, and I'm just like, okay, like, why do you feel like that? Like, and we're just like talking through it. And then I feel like they take a couple steps back and they're like, this person isn't screaming back at me. And I feel like once they've exhausted their aggressive approach, I feel like they become calm. And then you can have a fair level conversation with each other. Have you guys ever had experiences like that?
I have.
Yeah.
I just respond differently because you're not going to be yelling at me on the workplace.
Okay.
Period.
Yeah.
And I've been like that since I was little because I'm not here to be screamed at. But that does not mean that I haven't been in a toxic environment, haven't been in disrespect. It's the way that I deal with it. I think I needed to learn a lot more self-restraint. I wasn't cool, calm, and taking a step back. I was probably barking right back at him. So
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot of your lessons today. I'm like, that would have been a way to do it.
There are times that I'm like, I should have said something, or like, I don't know. There are times where I feel like sometimes it is a time to stand your ground. But yeah, I do think there's different forms of power, and some are quieter. Yeah.
I think there's a very delicate balance of protecting yourself, maintaining boundaries, letting the person know that you are to be respected, but at the same time doing it in a way that, like you said, it's not going to stoop down to their level.
Like, I shouldn't say talk to the hand because the face don't understand.
One more time?
Right? I don't remember this saying, but it used to be something in the 90s. Talk to my hand because something doesn't understand. You can edit that out.
Don't understand.
Yeah, right, because the face don't understand.
Right.
So going hand in hand with that is reactive versus proactive thinking. In the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he kind of talks on this subject, but it's really stayed with me and made me intentionally catch my thoughts and reframe my thoughts. I'll break down what reactive thinking is real quick. So reactive thinking is, think of the word reacting. You're reacting to things. So something happens and you respond to that thing. Reactive thinking is essentially thinking in a way where you're not in control of your response. So it's just the first immediate response to something. And you think in a way of, I have to feel this emotion because of something happening to me. So if we're talking about toxic coworkers or toxic management, I feel like reactive thinking is you're taking the responsibility and control of your emotion off of yourself and putting it onto somebody else. Like, they're responsible for my response. So you're saying, I have to be angry because of the way he acts. I have to be angry because of my coworker did this or that. Or I've heard this before, and I've thought like this before too, is my whole day is ruined because of someone else. My whole day is ruined because my boss did this, my coworker did this, or whatever it might be. And I feel like that thought process is really dangerous because it becomes an unconscious habit and you don't even realize the way that you talk to yourself, the way that your thoughts are structured. And the moment you start to think like that, you're starting to basically think like the problem is out there. It's not within you. And that's when you're empowering everything that's out there. And those are the things you can't control. You can't control your managers, your bosses, your coworkers, your friends, your family. But what you can control is yourself. So proactive thinking is where you reframe your thoughts in a way of, I choose to respond in this way. So I get to go to work, or I get to do this and that. And even if somebody acts in a way that's frustrating to you or unfair to you, you can choose to reframe your thoughts instead of, I have to be angry because he did this. It could be more like, he did this, but I'm choosing to respond with patience. I'm choosing to respond with grace. This really resonates with a quote that Stephen Covey says, where he talks about, in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So in choosing your response, it actually frees you. It frees you to decide the outcome of your circumstances.
I love that. And, as I already said, I'm someone who would react. I definitely didn't respond. I had to learn that over time. I would like to invite our audience who's listening today, that one of the things is, to think of all the times that you've reacted instead of responded. Practice this week saying, I get to respond to this in a positive manner in the circle of things that I can control. Pause, think about it, and then take a decision or an action.
There's such a power in that pause. When you give yourself that 5 to 10 seconds, whatever it is, when you're in a position of being triggered that pause can be really powerful in helping you to respond the way that your later self would have wanted you to really respond.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So you talked about navigating a toxic workplace. Do you have any other tips or strategies to help people who might be struggling with a similar problem?
I really liked what you mentioned to me a few weeks ago about how you were implementing in your schedule one day of the week to kind of make a designated you time. You weren't allowed to do anything work related.
Right.
Is that going well, by the way?
We're taking it step by step.
Okay, that's good.
Well, so as a Christian, we have this practice called taking Sabbath, and it comes from the creation story. So basically, God created the world in 7 days, right? But on that seventh day, he rested. So the idea is that we think that if we keep working, that we can get more and more achieved or more done. But if God can rest, if God chose to rest on the seventh day, then we should do that as well. And it shows that we're releasing control of the outcome because ultimately it's in God's hands. So taking that day of rest on the seventh day is symbolic in that way too. But yeah, it's something that you have to intentionally commit to. And it can be hard a lot of the time because, I mean, we're fortunate to love the work that we do, but for a lot of times it's for utility reasons, to feel like we have to survive and just keep working and working.
Yeah. And that's something that if you feel like you're a high achiever, I feel like you really have to be intentional about making that space for you to have rest and time where you're not working and to make time for the things that bring you joy. Even if your work is your passion and the thing that you want to be doing, I feel like there are seasons where even though it's your passion, it's going to be hard and you're going to be doing things that you don't want to do and doing the more difficult things where it feels more like a grind. So I do feel like there needs to be time that you carve for things that spark a light in your soul, things that you would love to do even though it doesn't make you any money.
Yeah, and I love how you said about it being identity. And as millennials, you all have a definitely more healthy approach to work-life balance. All of my life, I've been trying to be what others or what society thought I should be. So in school, I focused on academics, even though I wasn't really into academics. I was more into drama and the arts and things like that. And then I went and got jobs, and I've been working since I was 13 years old. And so if I'm not working, I don't feel like I'm successful. And so it wasn't until COVID when we all had to stop, like you said earlier, and I had to sit down and realize I had been going and going and going for decades. Even though I tried to put my kids first and I didn't put them in daycare, guess what? I would bring them to work with me because I was a teacher. So I haven't had a lot of breaks of not working. And now it really is about living a life of meaning and giving back to people. And what does that look like? Because that to me doesn't necessarily have a plan like your career track is more, okay, God, what do you want me to experience today? Or how can I impact the world today? And so it's been a journey getting to the point of giving myself permission to do this without feeling like a failure, even though I've had success. So that's one of the reasons why I say COVID was a blessing for me, because it helped me to pivot and really look at what I was doing in my life and how I was measuring my success and how I was beating myself up for not doing more. And so it took, the 4 years that it's been since COVID for me to say, you know what, you've done a great job in this arena of life. Let's focus on other things. And so it's probably being around you younger people who have a lot more, I guess, boundaries when it comes to work life and all of that. So.
And I think I've noticed a shift in different industries surrounding work culture and working. And I feel like the younger generations are definitely a lot more on the side of we want to do work that aligns with our values. We want to do work that is meaningful. And a lot of times I'm seeing that younger generations are willing to take a pay cut to work in a place where they feel like that is a priority, or at least making that a priority in work. and basically demanding better work conditions. And I think that's where remote working comes into play. A lot more people want to work remote because of the flexibility it offers and the stability and having time for your passions, having time for your kids, your family. And speaking of remote work too, I feel like physical boundaries are necessary. I'm not working remote as much right now, but I know you two do work remote. And I'm wondering if you place physical boundaries in your home in terms of separating work and personal life.
I think that is something that I miss about working from an office or with my coworkers is that there's a separation. The environment plays a strong part in where my mind is at. So it's easier to not just keep working, right? But now that I'm working from home, it could be endless. I can work, I can stop, I can work until I have to go to bed.
Right.
So creating those boundaries for myself and implementing it is something that I had to do intentionally.
I've heard people talk about this, and I can say this kind of happened for me too when the world shut down and we were at home. I know the industry that I was in, we actually kicked up our work and we were working, I felt like around the clock, even though we were working from home. And so we had to figure out, okay, this is a lot. How do we, scale back? And then people started setting their own boundaries. Like for me, I have clients. And so after a certain time, I don't check emails or texts, even as a consultant, because I'm not on emergency call service. You're not paying me for that, right? So I know the hours that I'm willing to work, and those are the hours that I work. So I have boundaries more around hours. I am somebody who does work on my phone. So even though I have a space in my house, it's not really a separate dedicated space, so it was more of a mindset for me in time. But as I'm working through the day, my phone is with me and I'm working as I go about my day until I say, okay, I'm off. No more work today.
Yes, your mental and physical health comes first. So when we talk about boundaries and all these things, I feel like nothing is worth sacrificing your health. Another topic that relates in this season of connection and connection in the workplace is the question of how do you cultivate long-lasting work relationships that make work more enjoyable? And this is something that's been on my mind. And I feel like my solutions are definitely more for people who are working with other people physically. Maybe you have something to offer for remote working. But for me, a big one was showing up to work, just being genuinely curious about other people, asking questions and listening. Because I've worked so many different jobs, and before I would really see work as just a means to an end, which it might be for you. I don't know if whoever's listening, where you're at in your job, in your career, maybe you see it as so temporary that you're like, what's the point? But I do think that showing up, being curious affects your energy that you carry into the workplace, and people can feel that. And in doing that, I feel like I've been able to cultivate such rich friendships and rich relationships with the people that I've worked with. And even if it's temporary, I don't regret the relationships that have come out of me just showing up to the workplace with kindness and compassion. And I'm wearing a bracelet today from one of my coworkers that I've kept in touch with. She was kind of like the mama bear of the group. Just taking time in the busyness of life to recognize that these are other human beings, all with their own lives and struggles that they're going through. You don't ever know what somebody else is going through.
I know that I was taught, and I always felt like you don't cross the line. You leave your work at work and you come home. You don't have the same friends. You don't share social media. But I've changed a little bit on that to say that, connection for a fuller life. I think we should be having points of connection in all areas of our life. Energy that makes us feel good. And so if you're going to work avoiding people and only just going to get the work done, that's like 8 to 10 hours of your life that you're hiding from other people.
Yeah.
That you're not showing up authentically, that you're not receiving love and kindness and caring because you're holding it back and everybody else is holding it back. We're just here to be professional and then we clock out.
Yeah. So you can be the first person to extend that greeting or extend that warmth. And I feel like that can completely transform your working experience, no matter what type of job you're in or what type of environment. The second thing that I feel like I've really practiced is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And for me, that's helped me to cultivate long-lasting work relationships. If somebody's talking to you, I feel like a lot of times they just want a listening ear. Really try to hear what this other person's trying to say, being empathetic, putting yourself in the other person's shoes. At the end of that, people are more willing to listen to you. And I feel like that's also something that Stephen Covey mentions in his book is if you seek first to understand and then to be understood, you actually increase your circle of influence when you do that. Because people, after they've exhausted what they need to say, I feel like then they listen. Then they seek to understand you. And I've really seen that being applied and working in every single circumstance that I've been in.
For our listeners, what book are you referring to?
Oh, right. So the book that I mentioned is called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I would highly recommend getting it because it's a book that's really transformed the way that I live. And he actually talks a lot about interpersonal relationships.
I love what Stephen Covey talks about, and I love his book. And there's another book called Captivate, The Science of Succeeding with People by Vanessa Van Edwards. That was really transformational for me when I read it. She's really funny. She gives great tips and stories. And so I would add that to your library as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think ultimately work doesn't have to suck. No matter what type of job you're in or what type of environment you're in for your work, you can make it what you want it to be. And you can enjoy the process, even if it is a temporary role. You can enjoy the process with the people you're working with, but it starts with you. You know, how are you showing up? You could be the one that's inviting people to an event or an activity, whatever it might be. I feel like putting yourself out there to attend those things and be a little uncomfortable, I feel like it can transform your experience of the workplace.
Well, this was fascinating stuff, Grace. I wish I knew you when I was younger.
I wish I knew you when I was younger, too.
Could have shortcut a lot of the learning that I had to do.
I needed someone to fight someone
right,
for me.
Right. Well, I would have been there. Believe me, I would have been there. Hey. So thank you for joining us for another coffee break episode. We are so excited. Our next episode is going to be about belonging as the solution to the loneliness and isolation, and how we have found that the best place to belong first is with yourself. So check us on all things Nexus Experience, and we look forward to chatting with you next time.